Azazel, the name itself sounds like something from an old horror movie. But to theologians and folklorists, it's one of the most infamous names of all time. Azazel is mentioned in the Bible, but his story doesn't end there. There's much more to this demon than meets the eye. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at everything you need to know about the famous Lesser Key. But first things first, let's talk about the origin of this lesser-known legend. The first mention of Azazel comes in the book of Leviticus, which is part of the Torah and therefore the Old Testament of the Christian Bible. It falls under a category of rules called the water tefillin, which covers purification laws and how to deal with various kinds of ritual uncleanness. Azazel is mentioned in the context of a scapegoat. Every year, a goat would be chosen to bear the sins of the Israelites. The high priest would lay both hands on the head of the goat and confess the sins of the people before sending the goat away into the wilderness. This ceremony was meant to cleanse the people of their sins and allow them to start the new year free from guilt. In modern terms, you could compare this to a really elaborate ceremony for saying sorry. One of the goats was always sent away to the wilderness, where it would wander aimlessly until it died. But this was no ordinary goat. The goat was seen as carrying the physical manifestation of the people's sins upon its back. So when the goat was sent away, it was actually the sins that were being sent away, not the goat itself. Where it went, none of the Israelites were allowed to go, and if they did, they were killed. One thing to note is that the word Azazel is a place name. It doesn't refer to anything other than the wilderness itself. Many have speculated that the name might come from Arabic or Aramaic, where it means strong, powerful goat. But scholars of the Hebrew language claim there is no such meaning and that the word simply means wilderness, nothing more. However, other translations of the Bible use different words instead of Azazel. For example, in the Peshitta, a Syriac version of the Bible translated in the 5th century AD, the wilderness was called Arvadim instead. So what happened? Did Azazel go on to become a demon, or was he always a demon? Or was he neither? Azazel only becomes prominent later in Jewish folklore and in the works of church fathers, some of whom were very concerned by what they saw as blasphemous elements of Gnosticism creeping into the early church. One of these church fathers was the man considered to be the father of demonology himself, Saint Bartholomew. According to him, Azazel was a fallen angel who rebelled against God along with 200 of his fellow angels during the war in heaven. They lost and were cast down to earth. There's no mention of Azazel in any ancient Jewish texts prior to the 3rd century AD. At that time, a book called the Testament of Solomon was written, and it refers to Azazel as a demon who can appear as a hairy wild man. He had a particular affinity for women and was said to have taught them magic and sorcery. Another tradition claims that he was a teacher of astrology and the secret arts. In fact, he's even credited with creating the art of writing. It was supposedly Azazel who taught men how to write on tablets of stone, although some versions say it was Azazel's brother, Samuel. It's important to remember that all of these writings are pseudepigraphical, which means they're attributed to famous figures like Solomon, Enoch, or Abraham, but they weren't written by them. Instead, they were written long after these men lived and were designed to sound like they were written by them. What makes them particularly interesting is that the writers would often incorporate information from oral traditions that were circulating at the time. We don't know exactly how accurate these accounts are, but it is possible that stories of Azazel and other fallen angels were passed down through generations before being written down. In the medieval period, several texts claimed that Azazel was the one who tempted Eve to eat the forbidden fruit. One text even goes so far as to call him the serpent. Others claim that Azazel was imprisoned inside the serpent after he tempted Eve, and that why snakes hiss to this day because they're quoting Azazel. Another medieval account claimed that Azazel taught humans how to make weapons and armor, but he did it out of revenge. Apparently, he created these things so that men would go and fight wars and kill each other. As you can imagine, this was seen as a pretty messed up thing to do, and it further cemented his reputation as a villain. Interestingly enough, Azazel was also sometimes used as a demon name in magical grimoires, books that contained spells and instructions for summoning demons. According to these texts, he was a great lord and president of hell and could only be summoned by an experienced magician. Some texts claim that he was too powerful to be summoned, but if he ever did appear, he would grant the magician unlimited wishes. It seems that Azazel is most closely associated with fire and brimstone, two of the classic symbols of hell. While most Christians see Azazel as a fallen angel, others believe he was a literal demon who wasn't originally an angel at all. Followers of the Gnostic sect known as the Sethians believed that Azazel was one of the fallen angels who mated with human women and produced giants. He was apparently the leader of this group, which is why he's later labeled the father of sin. Jewish folklore tends to paint Azazel as a tricksy, somewhat mischievous figure. In one story, he appears to a man named Rabbi Akiva while he is praying and demands that Akiva swear by his name. Akiva refuses, and Azazel gets mad and shoves him. The rabbi pushes Azazel back and tells him he's not worthy to be sworn by. To get his revenge, Azazel kills Akiva's ox, which happens to be a sacrifice for that day. Another story has it that Azazel once kidnapped a man and brought him to hell. When the man saw all of the torment, he started laughing. Azazel asked him why, and the man said he was laughing at him. He told the demon that he was the one who kidnapped him, but Azazel claimed he didn't kidnap the man at all. Instead, he just pointed to a nearby wall and told the man to read what was written there. The man read, "Whoever confesses his sin and leaves them will find mercy." Azazel tried to stop him, but the man continued reading, "Blessed is he whose transgressions are forgiven, whose sins are covered." When the man finished, Azazel became weak and started to evaporate. He warned the man that he wouldn't get away with what he did, but the man responded that he already had. Once the man returned home, he became known as the Tzaddik, which means the righteous one. There is also a Kabbalistic text known as the Alphabet of Ben Sirach that gives us some more information about Azazel. In this text, Azazel is one of the 7 demons of the underworld. He's described as having a fiery nature and rules over the southern quarter of hell. Also, according to this text, Azazel had a son named Sama who was born from his union with the daughter of a giant. Sama was said to be extremely ugly, but he became a famous magician. As you can see, Azazel has been portrayed in many different ways throughout history. Sometimes he's a fallen angel, sometimes he's a demon. But regardless of what he is, he's always a tricksy and often dangerous figure. So if you ever hear your name being called in the middle of the night and turn around to see a shadowy figure standing in the corner of the room, you now know what to blame. Did you enjoy learning about Azazel, the mysterious demon of the wilderness? Let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching.